Moving forward, we have been working with these requirements. You should be expert about doing requirements. Previous assignment with the requirements, with your stories, we review, provide a priority, provide an estimation. We talk about this planning pocket. Next step. You have your product backlog. You have all these requirements with priorities, all these items with priorities and estimation. Next step, we select which one we want to run in the sprint. Let's assume that you have only one sprint. I am going to ask you to do that. One sprint. So basically everything that you have in the product backlog should be moved forward to the sprint backlog. When you have that, I need to be clear. Your sprint, every single sprint should be about all these activities. If you're going to run a sprint, it's not about one sprint is collecting requirements and the other is design and the next one is programming and so on. That is waterfall. Your sprint has one goal, and the goal is to create a product, a working product. So your sprint probably is going to include all of this, every single activity in the software product life, right? So one project, requirements, the priorities, they are going to help you to decide which one to do first, and therefore which one should be finished and which one maybe are not going to be finished, are optional, whatever. Process, what we do, how this thing work for moving from the requirements to deliver a piece of software in 1 or 2 weeks. Just to be sure that you are familiar with the concept, I am going to mention the concept, but later what I want to introduce is your next assignment, the project that you're going to do working with your teams. So for the process, if you remember, we start here. You are experts there. We review this stack and all the content of the stack, and in particular, a very important concept with the deep. A stack of items related with requirements, knowledge acquisition, fixing bugs, and so on, with priorities and well organized. From here, we select some of them for your project, all of them, and you put them in another backlog, the one that you're going to use for your sprint. The goal is that when you finish this loop, you complete everything that you put there. Worst case scenario, if for any reason something is not done, something is not complete, you just put back that something in the product backlog, and therefore in the next sprint, you decide if that's something that was not done in the sprint that finished is going to be included in the next one, or is low priority and can wait for another sprint later. If you do not finish something, you put back that something in the product backlog. But hopefully your goal as a self-organized team is to finish everything that you select from here to here. Why? Because you're not only selecting randomly things, you're selecting according with this estimation that you did with the story points or with time. So you know the task, you understand the task, you put an estimation on time or difficulty to the task, and then you select all those things that you know your team can finish in the time that is the sprint, 1 or 2 weeks. So it could be really, really bad to have something here that was not done, unless you have a very good reason for not finishing. The member of the team that was supposed to finish this get sick, so that task didn't finish. Okay, that is a good reason. Other than that, a bad estimation, what I did was most complicated that I thought, that is not a good sign now. Because remember, it's not about it's most complicated and I didn't finish. the estimation was done not only by one person, but for the full team. The estimation of the difficulty, if you decide that that thing is easy and at the end is not so easy, if you think that that thing can be done in 1 week, but at the end you didn't finish in 1 week, it's not the mistake of one person, but the team. The team working is very, very important here. And it's going to be one of the things that we are going to evaluate regarding your project. This is one of these things in which the project is important. That you finish the product is important. It should compile and run. But team working. How do you handle your team? What do you do to be sure that everything is integrated because you have good rules with the members in your team? But well, I'm going to talk more about it later. So you select for the sprint something to do. In the sprint, your work to complete whatever you select to do with one requirement. Number one thing that we are expecting you to do. Every single day, you have a meeting. If you're going to do a sprint and your sprint is 1 week, the expectation is every single day during that sprint, you're going to have a meeting. This meeting, quotation mark, the daily Scrum meeting, is a meeting with 5 minutes. It's just a small opportunity for you, each of the team members, to share with the team the status of the task that you are doing. Important thing with Agile, communication. If you just start here and split the work between the 5 members in your team, and then you never talk again until 1 day before submitting the project, you're not following Agile. That is not the philosophy with Agile. You're meeting every single day. You're talking every single day with your team. Right now, 5-minute meeting is a conversation by Zoom in 5 minutes. What I am doing today, what I am going to do tomorrow. 2 questions. Today, tomorrow. What I am doing as a member of this team. And those 2 questions should be answered by every single member in the team. At the end of 5 minutes, I know what my teammates are doing right now and what they are going to be working on. I know about the status of the project, and the same apply for you, for the others. You know what I am doing and what I am going to be doing. You know if the project is moving forward or not every single day. This is important. And the second thing is there is not only about the meeting and about telling the others how the things are moving. There is a particular tool that you're going to be using here. You report as a team, the burn-down chart. Tell me, anyone familiar with the burn-down chart, what that is? Yes or no? If yes, help me to explain. Okay, yes, what is? What information do we put in burn-down chart? Okay, I like that definition. It's a chart. Okay, so it's going to look something like X and Y. Your X, this data, is time. Time, days. You are running a sprint. Your sprint is 1 week, 2 weeks. So you are running 5 days, 7 days, 10 days, 14 days, whatever you decide to work. Time. What about this one? The Y. The why, story points, the work. This one is the work, and let me be clear, is the work done? Is the work that you need to complete, the work to be done. The chart never is going to start in 0. The first value, if we think about time, day 0, when you start here in a 0 value in X, the value in the Y's is going to be like this. Today is my first day for the sprint. What I am going to put there is the work that I need to do, the work to be done. What is the unit to measure work? Number one is story points. So this work here could be story points. Story points. Yeah, remember that you took some items from the product backlog and you put those items in your sprint backlog. You put items here in the backlog that you're going to use for your sprint. The only thing that you do is to add all the estimations here together, and that gives you a number. The addition of all the story points of the task, the items that you're going to do during the sprint, that is going to give you a number. And that is the number here, the total of the story points, the total of work that you need to accomplish during your sprint, the amount of work that you're going to do. Now, hypothetically, if I am here in the day 0, here, the last day of the sprint, what I should have is being here. The last day of the sprint, my goal is to have 0 work to do. That means that I finish with everything that I should have accomplished. Theoretically, we can draw a line from this point to this point, and that line represents my ideal behavior. Ideal, yeah, when you are here in the middle of your time available, again, if you have a sprint of 2 weeks, when you are here, it's like you finish 1 week of work. Well, theoretically, at least, the number of work that you have done is 50% of the work that still need to be done. Again, hypothetically. Usually in the bulletin chart, you are going to have this work time, and you are going to draw this line, diagonal, that go from what you need to do to everything done. Every single day, you are meeting with your team. Every single day, you are telling the people if you have accomplished something or not. Whatever you have accomplished, have a cost, have an estimation. When you finish to do something, I just finished to do the web page for the login and password. I finished. I did that yesterday. So I am done with that. That have a value. And that value maybe was 5 story points, 3 story points, 10 story points, whatever. It's a value. That value, I am going to subtract from the total. And therefore, every single day, you can report to your team that, yeah, well, we start here. The second day, we didn't do anything. The next day, we didn't do anything either. But you know what? The third day, we did something. Something else. Nothing. Something. And continue. The burden chart shows you your progress. Day by day, how did you complete the project? You complete more tasks per day than was expected or less, whatever. And you can compare that with this diagonal line that is kind of the hypothetical perfect movement. This is something that you review every day. This is something that you feed every day, information for this. This is going to be key for your report, your burden chart. How did you move forward with the project? Now, you do this every single day, and in some point, you are done, you have one product. Let me be clear. If you are really working with Agile, the last day, maybe the project was too complex. Maybe the professor asked us to do something that is impossible to accomplish, impossible to finish in just 1 week or 2 weeks. But you should deliver something that works. The worst case scenario is professor or manager or customer. Do we have everything? But we still need time to put the things together. But everything is done. The only thing that we need is put things together. That is not a good Agile thing. If you finish 50% of the project, 60% of the project, that 50, 60, 40, 80% is ready to go, is connected, really to be tested, to be delivered. Maybe there are some elements missing. We didn't finish the graphical user interface. We didn't finish this particular functionality. But the ones that we finished are complete. There is an option for the user to use, and we can be tested, and we can show that they are done. You need to decide your priorities, and you need to deliver by the end a product that can compile and run. If you submit something talking about your project as a homework, if you submit something that do not compile, you receive a 0. This is not a programming course. I am not evaluating that you are good programmers. I am assuming that you are good programmers. You are not going to submit something that do not compile. If that something do not compile, it's because here you do not consider integration, or it's because here you do not consider testing, or it's because the team didn't organize correctly in order to have communication between you and me, and you are doing something that I need. Maybe we do not create the Pollo objects that we need to test my things, even though I do not have access to you. It's all about planning, design, and organization. It's not just randomly this fail. It's all about the process, and we want to evaluate the process. So your project should compile and run. Be sure that you deliver a product ready to go. Moreover, at the end of your sprint, something that the process suggests is you're going to run a retrospective and a review of the sprint. Retrospective and review. Those two things are things that happen in a meeting with your team. We are here, we are done with the sprint, and we are going to talk about a review, and we're going to talk about a retrospective. Tell me, what is the difference between a review and a retrospective? Because so far what I am mentioning is both are things that I am going to talk with my team. Retrospective versus review. Any idea about the difference? Okay, agree with your comments in the chat. Yeah. Okay, I am going to give you this hint and more or less summarize what you tell me. When we talk about a review, let's do a review of our sprint. Usually, the point of view, the core for the review is what happened with the product. What happened with the product is, let's talk about, did we finish everything that we commit to finish? The product is moving forward in a correct way. Maybe we didn't finish a particular functionality. What happened? Why? Is something that we are missing as a team? Is something that is happening with the customer, with the project? Usually talking about the review, the sprint review, the focus is on the product. What is happening with the product? What is the status of the product? How is the product going on? Both happen between the sprints. Again, the retrospective and the review happen at the end of one sprint. And therefore, the end of one sprint is something that happened before you move forward and maybe start a new sprint if you still have product backlog items. So they happen between sprints, more specifically at the end of one sprint. When you finish the sprint, you do a review, you talk about the product. What is happening with the product? We move forward with the product. It is too complex, the product. We need to do more research about the product. Second, the retrospective. If during the review we talk about the product or we focus our attention in the product, what do you think could be the core when we talk or when we discuss a retrospective? The people. Hopefully my pictures help. The second part, the retrospective, is more about, okay, the product, good or bad, the product could be moving forward or not. That is one thing, but we as a team, we as a people, okay, the product could be perfect. It's moving forward in a great way. But what about us as a team? Are we having a hard time? The product is failing. What about us as a team? What can we do to perform better in another sprint? What is something that we did that worked well? And what is something that we are doing that maybe is not helping us to move forward with the project? So, two topics, two things that you review at the end of the sprint, and just think about these two things. You talk about the product, what is happening with the product, at the end is your goal, but also Agile is for people. You need to talk about we as a team. We are okay? Yes, no, and if not, what can we do? Technical skills and personal skills, remember? That is what is involved here. Okay, retrospective, sprint review, the burn down chart, the product, and your backlogs. Those are the elements involved in this process. And those are the elements that I am going to ask you to share with me regarding a particular project that I am going to ask you to do. And that is going to be your assignment 3. The product backlog, the product done, the chart to check your movement, your retrospectives, and obviously the product to compile and run and see what happened. Not really talking about the formats for the retrospective and the review. The most important thing with Agile, remember, is not the document per se, but that the action happened. If you're going to talk with your team about the retrospective, if we're going to talk about what we're doing correctly or incorrectly, the important thing is that we talk. And the important thing is that whatever we talk is something that is going to help us for the next sprint. In particular, for the class, I am going to ask you to give me this in a document. And the only thing that I am going to ask you is a Word document, a PDF with a couple of paragraphs in which basically is your meeting minute about your talk for retrospective and for the review. No particular format to fulfill. Again, the action is the important thing to happen. Good? Okay, the process. Now, during the process, I just want to highlight, there are some particular actors in the process, roles that some people are going to have that is important to mention. You are a team in Agile. In Agile, you do not have a manager. No one in the team is the boss, the one that takes the decision. All the decisions, this is complex or not, is a democracy. All of you have a vote for the story points of each of the requirements. All of you have a vote during the meetings in order to select which one have priorities or not. Whatever are your decisions is a team decision. You cannot tell your instructor, you cannot tell me, you know what, that guy, he's the one or she's the one that took the decisions. I do not know. Is his mistake or her mistake? Things don't work in that way. You're a team, good or bad, you make the decisions in a democracy. You vote for something. However, inside of the team, there are going to be two roles that sometimes we misunderstood. Inside of your team, someone is going to be the product owner, the owner of the product. It's not the customer, it's one of you, one person in the team. Someone is going to be the master. If you're working with Scrum, the Scrum master, the master. Two roles in the team. Those roles, in the same way that before, the product owner, that is going to be the guy that is going to be more in contact with the customer. That is the guy that is going to have a vision on the forest and not on the trees. It's like you are in a meeting and you ask someone to take the notes. It's not that the person that is taking the notes is more or less important. It's just one responsibility. In your team, you're going to ask someone to take the responsibility of, we call it the product owner. And basically that means you have as a responsibility to keep us aware of the forest, the big picture of the product, and not go down to the technical details only, to do not lose the perspective that what we are doing is probably this big, and maybe today, tomorrow, this week, this month, we're working in this subset of features or in these technicalities, but the goal of this small thing is to fit in the big picture. That is the guy that is going to remember always talk with the customer and always be sure that whatever decision is taken, whatever question you have, guys, this question is not for us. It doesn't matter that we think that something is better or not in terms of functionality. The customer is the one that needs to tell us if he or she wants A or B. The vision of the product. Someone to think about the product always. What the customer wants. What is the concept that the customer have on mind? The customer is more concerned about the user interface, the usability. The customer is more concerned about the security. The customer is concerned about what? The profile of the customer. It's like the small voice in the team that is always considering, remember the customer. The perspective is the product. On the other hand, you have someone, the master. And again, just like the people that we ask to take the notes during the meetings. It's not that that person is going to be more or less important than the others, but it's one person in your team that is going to take the responsibilities of things related with the people. Things related with the people. Someone that is going to try to help the team to self-organize. And let me be clear here. Sometimes we get that the master is kind of the team leader, because I am asking the master to be the one to help you to organize. So it's like we are going to look at the master and we're going to expect the master to tell us what to do. It is not the case. The master is the one that is going to try to help with these soft skills, like, okay, these two cannot agree on something. People, the others, what can we do to help to take a decision here? It's not only about what these two things, it's about all of us. Is leadership skills helping the people to work together. But just remember, when we talk about leadership, we are not talking about being the boss. In a very romantic way, the boss is the one to give you orders, like the root of the tree. The leader, and in particular the master, the one that facilitates the thing to happen, It's just someone that is going to help the others, the team, to take decisions. But the decisions should be the decisions of the team, not the decision of one person. Enforcing the process, like planning poker, like telling someone, hey, this is not about you, the expert, telling us that this requirement is complexity one. You can be the professor and you can be thinking that this complexity is one, but the way that we follow to evaluate story points is planning poker. So planning poker means that we all need to provide a vote about the complexity. And if the majority here think that the complexity is 20, you can vote for one, but we are other 4 that think 20. The average is going to be above 13, 16, and we all should agree with that. It's a democratic team. So the complexity is going to end being 16, 17, even though one person in the team thinks should be 1. That is the process. And someone take the responsibility of kind of enforce that part of the process, and every other. One person in your team that have the assignment of taking care of the people and the things that are around the people, particularly self-organization, and be sure that everyone follow the rules. Product owner, everything related with the customer and the well-being of the product. Those 2 roles, very important for your team. Now, everyone else, including the master, including the product owner, everyone have responsibilities about doing something for the product, developing, testing, whatever. Every single person in the team is working in some product backlog item, and a sprint backlog item. Guys, it's not like I am the product owner or I am the master, and therefore you are the ones developing. You are the developers. I do not do developing. That is not the case. Do not report to me something like that. We are 3 developers, and those guys there were the leaders. Those guys there, the leaders, quotation mark, should also do some developing. Something that I am going to ask you is to use GitHub. Something that I am going to ask you is submit your work to GitHub. And if you are a team of 5, the expectation is that GitHub report 5 people working, doing commits, 5 people doing adding or removing lines, 5 people involved in the project. If you have only 2 or 3 doing that, it is not a justification that the others are just working in documents because they are owners or masters. Be careful with those. Well, the Scrum Master is the master. Again, Agile is not only Scrum, so the Scrum Master, particularly for that. Being the master is being this person that helps the others. The master sounds like a leadership responsibility, but is a helping responsibility. I am the master. I am the one that is going to help the others with any problem related with self-organization and enforcing the process. I am going to help the people. I am not the boss. So the master is the master, yes. That doesn't mean that it's the boss. That doesn't mean that it's the one taking the decisions. Just be careful with that. This is Agile is all about the people. And when we think about the people, every single member in the team have exactly the same rights that the others. It's a democracy. So no one is, well, it's a democracy, but no one is the president. So everyone votes and everyone is involved in the decision. No one decides for you. The master and the owner, they are there for helping, for keeping the eye on the people and on the product, for raising the voice about, hey, we need to remember about the product this. hey, guys, remember, this is about the people. We need to vote. Everyone needs to vote here. We need to have the meeting. We need to, but this suggesting things is keeping the people working with different focus of the people, focus of the product. They are not leaders. They are not the boss. They are not the manager. Just remember that part. So team effort, team effort. And when we talk about a team effort, everyone make decisions. When you submit your project, you're going to receive the same grade. You're going to receive the same grade. And the main thing that I ask you, please, when you receive your grade, do not contact the TA or the instructor to say, this grade is too low and the responsibility is because my team didn't do what I tell them to do. Maybe it's real. Maybe you have more skills than your team. During the meetings is the moment in which you can convince your team to follow your recommendations. Or maybe you need to work with another team, some teams that have better match in terms of communications and decision taking. You are going to create your own teams. Just because we're working in this virtual environment, I understand it's a little bit harder to be in contact with people. So I am going to allow you to create your own teams. Be careful with your selection. Is your selection. If you tell me later, my work is good, but my team is bad, I have no way to confirm or deny that. The only thing that I can tell you is, well, you select your team. So if they are good or bad, maybe you can interview them and be sure that share with your team your expectations. I am here to receive an A, give me yours. I am here to receive a C. Okay, maybe if you are working for a C and I want to work with an A, we are not good match to be a team. Talk with the people and be sure that when you do your team, you are doing your own hiring. Your team have the same expectations, the same goals that maybe you have. So you do not have problems later. You do not submit appeals later. And most important, appeals that are not going to have any difference. If you, well, what can I do? You think that the team is the bad guys, maybe the team thinks the opposite. Very hard to do something about it. So you're going to do your teams. You should be able to work together, basically. Something that is important, connected with the other, the only way that you can work in a team, that you really can take decisions with people in your team, motivation. Be sure that you create your team, that you team with others that have the same motivation that you have. I really want to learn this. I am going to use my 10 hours per week on this or not. Both scenarios could be okay. Just be sure that you're working with people that share your motivation. If you do not have the same motivation, if you do not share the same love for the company, or in this case, the same goals for the class, it's going to be very, very, very complicated to achieve self-organization. And this is true for the class. This is true when you are outside. If you do not share similar motivations to be there, this is not going to happen. And by the way, this is one of the things that your interviewers check with you during your interviews. Your programming interviews, yeah, a lot of technical stuff, those are important, but in parallel, your personality, whether or not you match with the team, whether or not you have this motivation to be part of the team. Because probably you're going to work with Agile and personal skills are almost as important as the technical ones. Practice that with your project. Anyway, technicalities, I am assuming that you have the technical skills that we need, at least to complete the project that I am going to ask you to do. It's use programming with Java. I do not think it's going to be any challenge. Maybe the only challenging part is going to be graphics. I am going to ask you to work with graphics a little bit. Whether or not you have experience with graphics, well, it's your opportunity to challenge a little bit your technical skills, but I am pretty sure that it's going to be a pretty small challenge there. It's just learning an additional library in Java, review some methods, that's it. So, the full process. And I am asking you to follow the process. One of the most important things that I am going to review, one of the most important things that I want to be sure that you are going to do well is the burn launcher. Is probably beside your product, the source code that I am going to compile and run, the burn chart is probably the most important document that you are going to submit that represent your work during the sprint. For the burn chart, I just want to be sure that we are clear that a burn chart looks like something like this. This is time, should be days for your project. I am asking you to tell me what you do per day. In any case, should be time is related with the idea of time. This should be effort, work. I am asking you to work with story points. Just because asking you to work with lines of code or asking you to work with the effort in time that you need is still too soon. We need to work with estimation. I need to talk with you about how to estimate better the detail of something, like how many lines of code this problem need to be solved. We need to do that. So far, my y-axis is going to be story points, and story points are very subjective to whatever you and your team is going to put here. One of the things that I want to review with you later is, well, you are going to be 10 to 15 teams working in the same project, so the difficulty is the same, but I want to review with you what is this number. Team 1, 250, team 10, 20. Why? We can talk about it. It's nothing good or bad. Again, it's subjective. Whatever number you put there is just the average, the addition of the complexities that you and your team put in the different responsibilities. But we can do some statistics with this. We're going to work with them after you submit your project. Anyway, second, always, this point is up. This point is down. There is no way that something different happened. And then we have the plots that represent what your team is doing. So usually the line and other plots, they go down or they stay in the same line, but never go up. And hopefully that is clear. So if I ask you in your exam, which of these burn down charts, and it doesn't matter the numbers are very small, but just reviewing the lines, which of these, A, B, C, D, are burn down charts that are correct? I am not talking about the project, if the project is going well or not. I am talking about they are burn down charts. A is a burn down chart, B is a burn down chart, C, D, and if they are good, if they are not, why they are not? Okay, I have the answers in the chat. Even though I am not sharing with you the details, but can you agree with your classmates? A and B looks like they are burn down charts. They look like, well, burn down charts. Being more specific, the A is telling me something like, well, this is the work to be done. Here is the point in which we finish. And this team basically procrastinate for several days. And here they start working and the second day they finish. Very weird board on chart, but it's just a team that procrastinate and then speed up and complete the project. That is A. Good or bad is a different story, but the plot is representing a board on chart. Good. Similar story with B. B is representing a board on chart. Again, this is the work to be done. This team procrastinate, and in some point they start working, and oops, the line is not in zero. The line is not in zero. What does it mean that that point is not in zero? Because here, both go to zero, zero in the y-axis. But here, this one is in zero, but this one is not. What do you understand with that picture? Exactly. Hopefully everyone agree. The chart B is telling me that the team procrastinate, and therefore, in the last day, they didn't finish. There are this number of story points, this number of work that should be done, and probably going to be done in the next sprint. But basically, from here, it's going to be returned to the product backlog. They didn't finish. In both cases, procrastination, in the first one, they finished, in the second one, they didn't finish, whatever. As a board on chart, those two are board on charts. One thing is a board on chart? Yes, they are. A different thing is if they follow the process correctly, or if whatever they are doing is good or bad. Different story. But they are board on charts. What about C and D? They are board on charts. They look like that. There are lines there. Could you say that C or D are board on charts? If not, why not? If yes, tell me.
C started too low, right? So you couldn't have started below the ideal line. And then D for the same reason, but also you've added a bunch of tasks in the middle of the sprint.
Exactly. Thank you. Guys, perfect explanation. It's like the goal of the board on chart is to show you how the work is moving down. So there is no way that if I have this number of tasks to be done, I am starting day zero. I mean, before I do anything, and suddenly I am done. This is not going to happen. What is going to happen maybe is you have this, and okay, you start here, and well, the next day you are down. The next day you have this difference. That is all the things that you complete here in the day one. This is possible, but this is not a board on chart. Something is not okay there. And the D, as you mentioned, is like, why did you start in zero and then you move up? Never, never, never. Your board on chart is going to move up. Think about this. If you move up, basically you're telling me that you are adding things to be done, or that something that was complete the previous day in the next day is not really complete. If that is the case, you update the previous day. It's not like I go down and then go up again. You do not go down in the first place. You make a mistake reporting the previous day, whatever, okay, let's fix, and the line is going to be flat instead of down and up. Be careful with this. Board on chart. These are just pictures that are garbage. Do not put garbage in your reports because this is zero. Well, very good point. If you continue working with the unfinished things of a previous sprint, let me be clear. The correct thing to do that you have your product backlog. In the product backlog, you have things to do. This is the product. When you move to a sprint backlog, you're going to select things from here, 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. And here we have more. You select this for the sprint. You are going to complete your sprint. The hypothetical scenario is that by the end of the sprint here, your sprint backlog is empty. Empty because you finish 1, 2, and 3. You are done. And if you do that, your hypothetical burden chart is going to be something in which you, this is flat, down, flat, and maybe that. So some days you work, and other days you didn't work, whatever. But it's going to be 0. What will happen if you do not finish something? If you do not finish something, I did 1, I did 2, but you know what? I didn't finish with the 3. I didn't finish. If you didn't finish with the 3, in your plot, this is the ideal, but well, you know what? Here is where you are going to finish. You work a lot here, and then the last days you didn't do anything, so you didn't finish, whatever. There is a difference here. This is the burden chart that corresponds to the sprint that you just finished. Done. This is your chart. Now, this number 3, what is going to happen, what should happen is the number 3 was not done. You are going to put the number 3 back to the product backlog. You finish your sprint, you go back to the grooming of the product backlog. What happened with the product backlog? Well, obviously, originally, you removed this 1, 2, and 3. The only thing that you left was 4, 5, and 6. The next thing to do, you didn't finish with the 3. You're going to put the 3 back here. And what you need to do before starting a new sprint is the grooming of this. And if you remember grooming, reorganization, reprioritization, re-estimation. Maybe I need to change the estimation for 3 because I didn't finish. Maybe I didn't finish because I think it was easy to do. We as a team put a 1 as the story points. It's really easy, but we figure out that it's not 1, it's 20, 100, whatever. So a new estimation here. Moreover, a new priority. If I didn't finish with the 3, it's maybe because, I don't know, number 1 have a high priority, number 2 have a high priority, and number 3 have a low priority. So it's the last thing to do, and I didn't finish, low priority. So far, it is better to do not finish 3 than do not finish 1. But now, what is going to happen? We want to do it in the next sprint, so we need to improve the priority. Now it's priority 1. Is really finish the 3 most important than starting with the 6, 4, or 5? I do not know. You do the grooming, and what is going to happen is another sprint. And this other sprint have another product backlog. Whether or not you include the 3, maybe you include the 3 and the 6 and the 4. When you do this sprint, what you are going to have is another burden chart. And this burden chart is going to start also with the 0. 0 work done. And what is this number? The addition of the story points of the new items that I put in my new sprint. So the chart here is going to start in the same point. We're going to start working and moving down, and hopefully we finish. So second sprint starting 0. The first sprint starting 0. Doesn't matter that the previous one finished or not, because you create the burden chart for the sprints. The sprint start, the sprint end. Well, here I finish my sprint. My sprint is the 3 was not finished. And that is something that you have in your report. The 3 was not finished. This space here is because the 3 didn't finish. You take a picture and this is done. Now the tree go back to the product backlog. The fact that you put the tree back in the product backlog is because you need that tree to be done. But that doesn't mean that now you can move your chart to 0. You didn't finish. This is like, think about this. You are doing an exam, you get 80 in the exam, and even though after the exam you learn the correct answer for one particular question, the answer that we're going to grade is the one that you put in the exam. So even though after the exam you learn the concept, you receive a low grade in the exam. So here with the sprint is you didn't finish the tree. The picture is your burden chart represent this space, this gap, that you didn't finish the tree. We put the tree back in the product backlog because somehow we need to do that tree in a future iteration. Make sense? So even though you move the tree to the product backlog, that doesn't mean that you put here a connection with the 0, because that is not true. You didn't finish. For your project, I am going to put that in the slide. I am asking you to be maximum 5. Obviously, that is for the project in the class. That do not represent a limit outside. Outside is usually a little bit more. So be careful to do not make these mistakes in the document that you submit with me. So these are just pictures that some of your classmates have submitted, and hopefully you do not submit anything like this. Can we detect the error here? Can you agree with me that you should have, well, it's not exactly the best diagonal line, but it should be a diagonal line, number 1. Number 2, here, the number, it could be 100. That is, I am not again to have a 100 there. However, it's not mandatory. I mean, it's not like 0 to 100 is the numbers for the Y. Remember, is users, your story points, whatever story points you have, the total, that is the point in which you start. This one, I think nothing to comment here. If you submit this, like your burden chart is like, well, probably you didn't attend the class. Another example that is very similar to the previous one. These are not burden charts. And finally, regarding your retrospective, as I mentioned before, retrospective and review, I am going to ask you for a paragraph just to tell me what happened with your process. What do you think about this and this? Copy paste from retrospective and review reports. Any feedback regarding them? What do you think about the first one? That first one, a very common one, guys. At the end of the spring, noticing that the endeavor was bigger than we expect. Here, this is a problem. It's a problem with the team. The project that I am going to ask you to do, I am sure that you can finish in one sprint. Other students have done the same project and they have finished. So the problem is not going to be the challenge of the project itself, but your self-organization. Usually, this kind of report, figuring out by the end of the project, is connected with procrastination, probably, or 2, do not underestimate the difficulty of the project. The project could look like very, very simple, but that doesn't mean that you can start working on them like 1 hour before the submission. The sooner that you can start working, the better. Be careful with this, subestimate the complexity of the project. You are a team of 5, and there is a good reason for that. The second one, and this is a red flag. What do you think about the second comment? Anyone there? Okay. All of that comment in the chat, I am glad that you bring the point. Yes. Most important, the last one. This should be about the team. We're talking about team review, team retrospective. And probably the first thing that I want you to notice here, and thank you for mentioning, is this is about the team, not about one person. This is a big red light. The idea here is someone put this paragraph in the document, and that someone somehow is reflecting that someone, that student, was the leader or the one taking the decisions there, which is not exactly in the spirit of this. But moreover, half of the sprint doing something. Be careful. You plan your sprint at the beginning, and yeah, the idea that you meet every day give you the opportunity to make adjustments, but the adjustments are small things with the resources that you already have, with the work that you are already doing. It is not like you are in the middle of the spring and suddenly you hire more people or whatever is the meaning of this paragraph. Be careful with that. The planning is at the beginning. It's not like, let's start working and see what happens. That is not agile. In some way, when you use agile, you are doing more planning and more self-report than if you were working with any other process model. It's not like, this is my part, see you, and we can meet 1 hour before submission. It's not going to work. And I am being more emphatic on that because there are cases every single semester with people trying to do that. And well, usually things didn't work. Obviously, it could be exception, but please be careful with this. Planning of your sprint is a key idea. Identify the strong and weakness in your team with the poker planning. That is very, very important. Notice if in your team you have all the same skills or there are someone that is going to need help, and therefore be careful about the task that you as a team decide to take during your sprint. So your assignment 3. For your assignment 3, I want you to help me to implement this software. And you remember the software because I asked you to do the requirements. And there is a version online of the software, so you can have the opportunity to go to the link and play with the software. Basically, what I am asking you to do is the same, but in Java desktop application. Now, what I want, as I mentioned before, is I would like to know your stories for this. You already have the stories related with the functionality. I am curious about if you're going to include in the product backlog stories related with other things. I would like to have that you share with me a picture of your sprint backlog, the one that you start working the first day of your sprint. I am curious about that. Are going to be items on those categories? I do not know. I am not asking you to put any of them mandatory. Again, is your product backlog, is your sprint backlog? The only thing that I am asking is share me a picture of that. Whether or not you have only features or technical or knowledge or defects, just show me your product backlog. I am curious about how your product backlog looks like. Obviously, I want the product, the complete product. I want your burden chart. That is the reason because I show you examples of the errors. And I want these paragraphs with your retrospective and with your review. So I want the product, but also I want documentation about the team, your team, following the process. As I mentioned before, you can work in a team, 5 people, the maximum. You are free to select your team. You make your teams with your friends, with the people that you want. Following the process is up to you. You meet every single day. You're going to use Zoom or any other communication way. You're going to meet in person. Your decision with your team. Again, my goal is you can choose your team. Therefore, hopefully that makes things easy to communicate with them, and also easy to do these interperson communication factors things. So hopefully you work better. At the end, I am going to give you for this only 1 week. And yes, I know, a very short sprint, only 1 sprint, very, very small. It's a very small project. It's just my first request for you to follow the process, to work 5 days, during those 5 days, 7 days, whatever you want to do, include weekends or not, do the burden chart, track how your work moved forward, do an estimation and check if that estimation was good or not so good, and share me your retrospective and your review. So if the product finally worked well or not, and if finally your work with your team was as you expected or not. So I am going to give you a little bit more, like 10 days. So that is going to be your time with your team and to complete the previous project and to submit the document that I mentioned. I am going to put this list on Canvas. Only 1 person submit as usual. And to be clear, the functionality is important. We're going to grade that your project compile and run. Please, if do not compile, is 0. Should compile. Whatever you submit, should compile, should run. But obviously the product is important, but also the process. So be careful to do not submit these burden charts like the ones that I show you, like common errors. Okay, assignment 3, clear. It is clear what are you going to do and what things I am asking you to submit. Sprint product backlog, the product itself, the burden chart, the retrospective, and the review. No specific format for the retrospective or the review. Use a document, 1 paragraph, 2 paragraphs, I don't know. Hopefully your retrospectives and your review are easy and small. But if there is a full story that you want to share with me, if something really bad happened, well, that is the space to share. Questions? Okay, guys, I am going to stop here. Any specific libraries? Thank you for asking. Java, Swing, only. That is my only requirement. Everything related with graphics, only Java Swing. No JavaFX, no other crazy libraries. Everything related with graphics, Java Swing. That is a requirement. Sometimes people ask me, Professor, can we use the collections? And my answer is Yes, you can use collections. But you told us that we only can use Java Swing. Java Swing for the graphics, but data structures and input output and other things, all the Java API, you are welcome to use. But for the graphics, Java Swing, that is my non-functional requirement. I think the only one. Good. What goes on the product? I am asking for the source code. We are going to compile, so I need the source code. My recommendation is not the key part here, but be sure that your source code is easy to read. I mean, if you have some knowledge about software design, remember Javadoc could be a good idea, good names for your variables, spaces, tabs, and so on. I mean, we're going to really review your source code besides compiling. So if you can apply your knowledge about clean coding, that would be appreciated. But well, the product, the source code. Good. I am going to make the link bigger. Is here. I mean, playgameoflife.com. I'm not sure if you can get the PDF and just do the Zoom, but so far I think maybe there you can read it. Not sure, but that is the link. Okay, guys. See you next lecture. Thank you.